Bring It In is where sports meets a lot of things. Business or politics, pop culture or social issues with insight, nuance, and a bit of humor. We want to be your go-to spot for the most important sports conversations on the field and off of it. In this episode, we'll look at the business of track and field and how to bridge the gap between sport and commercial product. As a sport, track and field is straightforward. You run the fastest or jump the highest or the farthest, you win. But the business of track and field? For athletes, it can feel more like an obstacle course or a jigsaw puzzle. Now, we're used to the business of big league pro sports with broadcast and sponsorship and licensing deals. Players and teams will still fight about money, but we know that in general, salaries should rise and fall with sport-related revenue. Players also join organizations which are part of a league, which in turn has a defined schedule and collectively bargain rules about what players are owed. Track and field doesn't have any of that. It has the Diamond League, home to the highest profile meets and the biggest prize money. But the Diamond League has no real feeder system. To get there, you need a combination of standout performances and a well-connected agent. So as a result, the marquee performers in the glamour events can make serious money, especially when you factor in shoe contracts. But for other people, the track and field equivalent of the third pitcher in your rotation or the NBA players filling out the starting lineup behind a supermax salary megastar, making a living might involve piecing one together with little job security and precarious healthcare. In North America, big audiences parachute in for global events, and as long as the top performers perform, we think everything is fine. But beneath the surface, for a lot of athletes, it can be a grind. Does it have to, though? In this edition of Bring It In, we're exploring the business of pro track and field. We'll look at how athletes balance training and competing with paperwork and paying the bills, and discuss how to make the sport make more financial sense for the people we all come to see. Veteran agent Merhawi Keflezighi represents every type of pro runner, from ultramarathoners to sprinters. So he has seen the business from every angle and knows where there's room to improve conditions for athletes. A few years back, he butted heads with Nike in public over an athlete contract and says a new influx of shoe company money could give track athletes unprecedented leverage. Joining us from Indianapolis, Indiana, we have Howie Keflezighi, head of Howie Management. How are we doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Perfect, man. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. My question to you is this. Let's say you have a new client, fresh out of the university system, fresh out of the NCAA, looking to turn pro. You sign them, they're ready to turn pro. What advice do you give them about navigating the business of track and field as opposed to the sport of track and field?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So early in my career as an agent, I worked with established athletes like my brother, Merhawi Keflezighi, who had been a professional for several years, and then Leo Manzano. And those individuals had a support system around them, right? They had coaches, accountants, financial advisors, physical therapists. And so I kind of took all that for granted early in my career as an agent. But now that I'm recruiting athletes out of college, I'm realizing they don't necessarily have that infrastructure set up. And that infrastructure that's in college at the NCAA level is all of a sudden taken away from them. And they have to kind of recreate it. And so now we're intentional about creating and recreating the infrastructure that's going to help them support themselves in the next level.
Let's say you have an athlete, and we'll just use a round figure because it's easier to do the math. Well-paid athlete, their total income from appearance fees, prize money, shoe sponsor, other sponsor, $1 million a year. Nice round number. It's a well-paid athlete. So what percentage of that $1 million comes from the shoe deal? What percentage of that $1 million comes from other deals? What percentage comes from appearance fees? What percentage comes from racing?
Yeah. So let's go with the sprints first, right?
Okay.
In the sprint, track events in general, right? Track and field events, there's not a lot of prize money in there, right? The Diamond League is the most competitive level of track and field on the track. And that you win the Diamond League is $10,000, right? You win the Prefontaine Classic, for example, you win $10,000. Sponsorship is huge, especially for track and field athletes. The majority of their revenue comes from sponsorship. So if you are an Olympic medalist or gold medalist or world record holder, the vast majority of your revenue will come from the footwear and apparel sponsor. That's usually the biggest one. And then bonuses, right, that come from that same contract. And that means, for world records, Olympic medals, world championship medals, specific times, those types of bonuses that come in. Now, when it comes to like marathoners, for example, there's a lot of opportunity for significant appearance fees and prize money. So, for example, if you win the Boston Marathon, this is publicly available information. It's $150,000 prize money. Obviously, only one man and one woman can win that each year, whereas on the track, you have 14 events or more. So, that $10,000 for every winner of each event, it adds up.
It's one thing to win the race and win the money, but there's only one person that wins every race. How do you get race organizers and sponsors and other stakeholders on board in terms of establishing a salary floor and not just a prize money cap?
I think the way to do it is you got to start somewhere. And I think the Diamond League, in my opinion, is a good place to start in track and field. I think with the marathons, there's significant prize money and there's decent appearance fees that are paid. So I think we're in a pretty good situation when it comes to road races and especially marathons. But I think on the track side, we do have a lot of room for growth. And because sponsorships are so important, I think the races are getting away with paying less. And some of these top athletes get paid significant appearance fees to compete at these events. In my opinion, I think all those appearance fees that nobody sees, right? It's kind of under the table. It's legal for sure, but it's kind of like from the amateur history of track and field, right? Yep. So appearance fees are paid so people can be at the starting line. And that's all good. Some of these amazing athletes deserve that because they do move the needle. But how about if you just elevated the prize money for everybody and then let the best man or woman win? Obviously, the challenge is a Diamond League event has so many different events and disciplines that are competed and so many athletes. But I really do feel like if you're, number one in the world in the hardest event, $10,000, with the inflation and everything else that's going on in the world, I think we need to kind of value our athletes a little bit more and not require or depend on sponsorships as much.
Right, and because I was going to ask you too especially about ASICs specifically, because they're spending big money at both ends of the spectrum. Like, how much healthier does that make the sport overall when the top athletes aren't as beholden to the generosity and also the whims of one or two major companies?
At the end of the day, we want the best for the athletes, and the more opportunities there are for athletes, the better it is for, I think, our industry. But now there's a lot of new brands that are entering the footwear space at a high performance level, right? Puma is getting into middle and long distance running in the United States. ASICS just signed Fred Curley, Hoka, On, Brooks. I think when you have a lot of power, focus concentrated on one or two companies, it's really hard for the athletes to have any leverage or an even playing field. But I think now it's a very healthy time in our sport where there's a lot of contenders and potential sponsors for the athletes.
Perfect. Howie, thanks for taking the time to be with us today, and have a great rest of the season.
Thank you so much, Morgan.
The 2023 World Athletics Championships in Budapest, Hungary are coming to CBC this summer, and Canadian decathlete Damian Warner will be looking for redemption after a catastrophic ending to his decathlon last year. Here's a closer look at what went wrong and his journey back to the World Championships.
Yeah, the decathlon is somewhat of a nightmare. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. But I think the beauty of the decathlon is like the idea of like, what if I get all 10 events to go exactly as planned? I don't know if there's anybody in history that's ever experienced that, but why not be the first guy to be able to do that?
Damian Warner really only lacks two things. That's a world championship title and the world record.
Warner plants up. Oh, that's a big jump. That's the biggest jump we've seen so far. Yeah, he means business. Damian Warner of Canada, the leader through 4 events. This is to put a cap on day 1 with another big finish.
The only way he could lose is if something catastrophic happened, and that's what happened.
Not a great lane draw. You always want to be in the mix in lane 3, 4, 5, but Damian in lane 1.
Just running the 400 meters at the World Championships, here's how it works. In the heats, nobody runs in lane 1 because it's an enormous disadvantage. For people to understand, when you start in lane 1, you run the entire curve as you're accelerating. And you're the only one who runs the entire curve as you're accelerating. That's why they don't make people do it in the 400-meter heats, because as you're accelerating, there's way more pressure on your lower body.
I think it was probably a number of causes that came together, and maybe lane 1 was the straw that broke the camel's back.
And they're away, the third and final heat in the decathlon, 400 meters. And Owens DeLerme has gone out very quickly in lane number 7. Damian Warner also looking strong as he runs by Stephen Bastien of the United States. And now Warner is pulled up. Oh my goodness, Warner with a hamstring, clutching his hamstring, goes down on the track. Aiden Owens DeLerme will get to the finish line.
Hopefully it's not a pulled muscle.
Oh.
Regardless, Damian's decathlon is over.
Any redemption for this Worlds?
It's absolutely a redemption story. And to win a gold medal at the Worlds when it's your 7th World Championship, I don't know if anybody's ever done that.
World Championships didn't go so well last year. Lucky enough for me, we have another one this summer. I'm more invested now than ever. I think that there's a lot that I still need to accomplish and still want to accomplish. I feel better now than I do 10 years ago. Me and Gar and Dennis, we've come up with like a rhythm and a training cycle that works really well with me.
That was really good. No, that's where you want to be.
2 meters, right?
A little bit more than 2 meters, probably 210. So yeah, that one was pretty much bang on. He could do this for 5 more years if he really wanted to. He's 33, he's gonna be 34 this year. He's already the oldest person to have won an Olympic decathlon. Why not just keep doing it?
I mean, at this point in my career, there's no hiding it. I want to win a gold medal.
Be sure to check out Athletics North, the new home for track and field on CBC Sports. We're talking about the big personalities and even bigger results, analyzing the how and the why and bringing you into all the action and storylines. Head to cbcsports.ca or CBC Sports YouTube channel. I'm not going to tell you to pencil in Canada's Aaron Brown for the 100 and 200 meter finals at the World Championships in Budapest this summer, but he's the only man to make the finals in both of those events in each of the last 3 global championships. So I'm not going to tell you not to reserve his spot, but I will tell you that in addition to being the world's most consistent sprinter, Aaron Brown has a 10th degree black belt in Instagram Reels and some serious thoughts about how to improve the business of track and field for everybody in it. Aaron Brown, my first question for you is, in your opinion, is there anybody in the NFL right now that could beat you in a 100-meter dash?
No.
Move it down, 60-meter dash.
No.
Move it down. We're going to speak the language that more sports fans speak. The 36-meter dash, which the rest of us know is the 40-yard dash. Is there anybody in the NFL that could beat you over 40 yards right now?
Now, 40, I'm not sure because I don't contest that. So that one, I would have to see. There's a chance. I'm not sure exactly what I could run. I'm not going to be as confident as the 60 and the 100, but anything track related to, no.
From a marketing standpoint, what do you think either athletes or sponsors or federations and sanctioning bodies should be doing in a country like the United States, a huge market, to make your sport better understood and more marketable?
The main issue with our sport is that we kind of present it in a unified way, but sports are kind of digested differently depending on what region you're dealing with. So I think the major influence of our sport is European because that's where the major meets are, and the bulk of our circuit is competed and contested in Europe. And so it's presented in a way, in a format that is successful in Europe. But we have a different flavor over here in North America. So what works over here is going to be different than what works over there. And what I would suggest is kind of leveraging more opportunities to kind of network with other sports that are successful here. Because if you see and notice, like Tyreek Hill, for example, just ran a 60 and made all kinds of headlines. He's on SportsCenter, ESPN, all that stuff. Everyone's talking about it like, wow. And he just ran a 6.7, right? And so they're like, they understand that this is a football guy. And when you have someone that they care about, the sport then becomes more popular. So if we could leverage a way to speak the language of what other sports speak, i.e. like the 40-yard dash, how our times translate to that, and how they can appreciate our speed and what we can do versus what the speed they put out, I think that might translate over well into gaining more fans, because they might see and respect how fast we can go.
Right. So, Aaron, so what you described right there is a lot of people with talent in more than one sport choosing football sort of as a business decision, because that's where the money is. So, like, what can they do to make the business side of track and field more appealing, so that more often the business decision might lead somebody to track and field instead of the sport that's going to give you concussions?
But I think we need to have another avenue, especially in North America, that's more tailored to the casual fan today. And so that might look like more head-to-heads, more like a UFC type structure where, let's say we have an Andre DeGrasse against Fred Curley, like he challenges him and they have a press conference and there's trash talking and there's a buildup. We're going to watch their training workouts and interviewing them like, hey, what are you about to do? And we kind of have more glitz and buildup. Like, I feel like that's more of the flavor of North America, and what we kind of look for is something to get behind that's more bravado, more like how we had the Donovan Bailey versus Michael Johnson race back in the day. Like, that was perfect. I don't know why we didn't have more of that after, but I think that structure was perfect, and we need to go back to something like that in that type of form.
For athletes, like, would you guys benefit from either a league structure or even collective bargaining, the same way that there's a musicians union and an actors union? Would you guys benefit from a track and field athletes union?
Absolutely. And I don't know what the avenue is to create something like that, but I think we would benefit so much from that. I remember when we first announced that Wanda was sponsoring the Diamond League, and it's supposed to be like this record-breaking amount of money and all this stuff that's supposed to be good for the sport. I've seen prize money go down over the years, like since I've come into the sport. And it's like, wait, you're saying it's record-breaking and all this money that's influxed into the sport, but where is it going? How is it being managed? There's no transparency. And that's the biggest issue, is that, like, if you go to a Diamond League meet, there's a thing called an appearance fee where people get paid just to show up, but nobody knows that. It's not publicized. So one person could be getting an appearance fee of, I don't know, $50,000, and someone can get $500. And there's no criteria for what someone gets for a certain thing. And there's no market where people can benefit from, okay, if the Olympic champion gets this, he sets the market at that. But you see that all the times in the other professional sports that are run well, is that if someone sets the market at a certain amount, then okay, I had this level of production, I deserve this amount. And then that's when we can increase the amount and have some type of parity.
Last question, hypothetical. I give you a bottomless budget, and you have a chance as Aaron Brown, the athlete, but also as the promoter, like you were laying out before. You're the fight promoter now. You get to put together a card here in Toronto.
Okay.
Who's on it?
Ooh. Okay. Well, I'm gonna be biased myself, admittedly, but I would like to see, if it's in Toronto, I would put myself against Andre for Battle of King of the Six. Let's call it that. Let's make it a feeling of, that sells itself. Two kids from Toronto battling out, kind of like national championships, but in Toronto, so it's more personal. We want to run the town. And then I would take. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take Fred Curley.
Yep.
I'm gonna take Michael Norman. Okay. And I'm gonna take Kenny Bednarik, who are all guys that can run the 1, 2, and 4, and have a multi-race event to see who's the best, like most versatile sprinter out there, and who gets the title of who can do multi-events the best.
Yeah, so that would be like the mixed martial arts to the boxing, right? One measures versatility, one measures specificity. Exactly. And if you are the promoter and the main event headliner, then you're less like Don King than like Floyd Mayweather, because you're fighting the people and then you're cutting them the check.
Right. Yeah. I like it.
Aaron Brown, listen, man, I know you're busy. I know you've had a hard week of training. It's hard being Mr. Consistent, but there you are. I really appreciate you taking the time for being with us.
Absolutely, appreciate it. Always love talking professional track.
Canadian middle distance runner Marco Arop is a World Athletics Championships bronze medalist and holds multiple school records at Mississippi State University. CBC Sports spent some time with Arop in Starkville, Mississippi to look at what the gift of running has given him.
I didn't choose running, it sort of chose me. Seems kind of cliche, but I think it's the truth. It wasn't something I went out and sought after, it was just naturally always there. Try to be mindful with my running. I try not to overthink things, but at the same time, I think it does help me when I'm in training, in sessions. The goal is to focus on my form, make sure everything is aligned and I'm using every part of my body the way it's supposed to be used. So my arms are swinging the proper way, my knees are lifted. But when I'm on an easy run or just going out to get my mileage in, sometimes if I don't have music in my ears, I just kind of enjoy the moment. Embrace that feeling, just how lucky I am to be able to run and enjoy myself and go out and just do the things that I love every day. I think that's the sense that I get every time I go and run. Even this morning, just looking at the views and like how lucky I am to be able to do that. It's almost like a gift that I've gotten, and then to be able to use the gift and naturally be good at it, I think that makes it a lot easier. And then now that I'm able to actually train and put the pieces together, it just makes me enjoy running even more.
It's fitting that Aaron Brown mentioned Tyreek Hill because I was just thinking of the Cheetah, who is in the second season of a $130 million contract with the Miami Dolphins. The NFL's chief speed merchant hopped into a 16-meter dash a few weeks ago and ran a very respectable 6.70 seconds. Predictably, some track nerds treated him like an unwelcome guest or a traitor for having abandoned the sport in the first place, and it's fair to wonder what might have been. Hill ran the 100 meters in 10.19 seconds as a high schooler. But there's no guarantee he would have leapt from there to the sub 9.9 second clockings that win medals and big money. And improving his 100 meter time to say 10.02 might not have helped because, as Aaron pointed out, pro track and field doesn't have much of a middle class. Luckily for Hill, he also had ball skills and could monetize his speed as a football player. But if you're a guy who doesn't want to risk head injury or a woman who doesn't have a big money pro football option, you might be stuck. And that's a shame because a healthy middle class in track and field means more depth. Most of those people won't develop into the next Shelly Ann Fraser Price, but a few of them might if they could afford to. So track and field stakeholders, it's time to brainstorm, get creative about marketing the sport, about funding it. In short, stop giving middle-class athletes reasons to leave the sport and instead provide incentives to stay. It's not a cost, it's an investment. Hope you've enjoyed our look at the business of track and field, and be sure to follow our CBC Sports social media platforms for more of our content. I'm your host, Morgan Campbell, and we will see you next time on Bring It In.